Hello once again, Earthlings. It's me, the hippie conservative, your Pythia of politics, your psychedelic alternative to pre-chewed political food. We're going to cover a lot of things today, see what we can get going here, see if we can get you excited about a few things. Okay, people, don't panic. I do not have my tie-dyed t-shirt on today. I forgot it. What can I tell you? I thought it was in the back of my car, and I don't have it. But so you get the generic version of me, but that's okay. It's still me, it's same guy. Don't worry. It's still the Pythia of politics. Pythia. You guys probably hear me say that every once in a while. It's part of my little shtick. But it's Greek for prophet. So over the prophet of politics, me, the hippie conservative, Commander Hipcon. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. I'm going to talk about some local politics. I'm going to talk about Katrina. I'm going to talk about global warming. We're going to touch on that a little bit. We're going to talk about Google and the new dark ages, the Scooter Libby, the burning of the Quran, Obama's spending and vacations, anything we can fit in. You know, a lot of times I lay these out and we don't really get a chance to go through everything, but we're going to try to see if we can't cover everything today. Let's start with Katrina, because about 2 weeks ago, we had the anniversary, the 5th anniversary of Katrina. Now, this is a sore spot with me because Katrina, you know, I want to be careful. I'm not going to blame any of the people that are in Katrina for their own tragedy. I don't believe in blaming the victims and disasters. However, the media portrayed that in a very biased way. If you look at Katrina, and if any of you watch TV, and I'm sure everybody saw it. I mean, I know everybody knew what happened when Katrina hit in New Orleans and all the devastation and how the levees gave way and everything else. And if you look at the media, and especially if you just recently watched the 5th anniversary and all the telecasts of it, you found out something. I'll bet most of you thought that almost every single person that died in New Orleans was black. You'd be wrong. You'd be real wrong. The media wanted to portray it that way because, as Kanye West famously said, they wanted to portray Bush as hating black people. And the best way to do that is by only showing black people on your media. So I actually got some statistics here. And this is from the Health and Hospitals from Louisiana. Just to show you guys how distorted this was. African Americans, this is the actual bodies that were pulled out of the Katrina victims, is identified in the St. Gabriel and the Carlisle morgues, which are the two morgues that they sent all the bodies to. And this was the total, 1,464. Now, they've since upped it a little bit because there was 346 from other states, 223 that deceased victims that they couldn't find. Don't ask me why they couldn't find them. A couple of people that weren't identified. So since that point, they've bounced it up to about 1,800, but it's been pretty consistent. African American, 451 out of that 1,464, and they constituted 53% of all the deaths. 53%. Now, did you people when you looked at it, did you see 53%, or did it look like 100% to you? Okay, Caucasian, 39%, Hispanic, 2%, Asian Pacific, 1%, Native American, 1%, unknown, 35%, which was 5%, 53% of them were males, 47% of them were females. Now, that's not what you saw when you looked on your TV, and there's a good reason for that, and that's the media bias. They wanted to make it look like it. And when this thing came back and we had the 5th anniversary, I was dead certain that they were going to do this once again. So if you guys want to ever, call and talk to me about any of this stuff, you can call me at the HC or email me at thehclive.com, or you can call me on the number that you're seeing scratched across your screen there on the little scroll. But I just wanted to get that out of the way because that's really another one of the things that bugs me. And I'm going to touch on another one here, Scooter Libby. We just had, now if you guys that don't remember Scooter Libby, Scooter Libby was the guy that during the Bush administration, they had the outing of Valerie Plame and Joe Wilson. Joe Wilson was a House rep who went down and did an investigative report on whether or not there was yellow cake uranium being brought out of South Africa. And it was one of the contentions that the Bush was making about the weapons of mass destruction. Bush was trying to say that there was this yellow cake uranium that was coming up from South Africa, and that Saddam Hussein was trying to purchase it, and it was more proof that he was trying to accumulate weapons of mass destruction and create a nuclear bomb. Now, the left immediately came right after this. Joe Wilson came out and said it was all false right off the bat. And then in retaliation, supposedly, the Bush administration, particularly Cheney is the guy that they were pointing at, and Scooter Libby, outed this woman, Valerie Plame. And Valerie Plame was a CIA operative, but she didn't really work as a CIA operative. What she did is she worked in the CIA, and what she did was she arranged like passports and identification and things like that for the other CIA agents that were running, a false persona. And so she really wasn't an operative in that regard. So that was already a little bit of a lie. But here's the thing. Scooter Libby just recently, his case just came to trial, and all charges were dismissed. And so Scooter Libby is basically a free man. But what you guys didn't hear ever was the truth of what happened. And this is super easy. If you guys look it up, the guy's name is Richard Armitage. Armitage. Tiage. Armitage. Richard Armitage. And Richard was the guy that actually did out Valerie Plame. He was the original guy that came out and gave the report that was printed. Now, when they came out, they gave this woman's name in this article that was done by Bob Woodward, who is famous for the Watergate trials, and Bob Novak and Judith Miller. Judith Miller ended up going to jail because she wouldn't reveal her source. Bob Novak and Bob Woodward also, were pressured in depositions and everything else to reveal their sources, and they invoked their right as journalists not to reveal their sources. But because they wouldn't reveal their sources, the media went nuts, saying that it was a Scooter Libby, that he was the real guy. Now, the funny part about this is they knew all along that it wasn't, because they all knew that this Richard Armitage was the source for the story. And the way that they knew was because Richard Armitage was a guy that was a Republican, an insider, kind of inside of the Beltway type of guy. But he was a notorious gossip. He was a guy that would go to all these different, magazines, Louse Magazine, or any of the Hollywood rags, and he would say the inside scoop about who was dating who was divorcing who. He was kind of that kind of guy, and he kind of gave the information without really thinking it was a very big story at the time. Just happened to be saying, yeah, I knew Joe Wilson, and I knew that he was involved in this, and I know his wife Valerie Plame. She works for the CIA, and Judith Miller was actually the one that picked up on it and ran with it. Bob Novak and Bob Woodward were part of it because they all signed their name on it to try to make it look like it was, not done all by one person, so that way they could hide their source a little bit better. The bad thing about it is that at a certain point, Bob Novak and Bob Woodward actually came out and told these guys that it was, and while Judith Miller was sitting in jail, and told them guys that it was Richard Armitage. These are the guys that were part of the actual story. And in the end, even Judith Miller came out and said that it was Richard Armitage. But for some reason, not for some reason, for obvious political reasons, all through the entire time that they were trying to prosecute Cheney and trying to prosecute Libby, they ignored that fact and would not admit that they knew it was Richard Armitage because they wanted to ride this thing to get Bush out of office. I'm no Bush fan, okay? And, if you guys, any of you people that have listened to me, I put a lot of the blame for what happened in the economy firmly in the lap of the Bush administration. But you can't go around just making crap up and hooking up a guy that obviously did not do this. And Scooter Libby obviously did not do this. So you guys that's two things already that you guys have been lied to by left stream media. Now, it's not like Fox News and all these other guys don't do it either. They do the exact same thing, and I'll have other examples. This is just a day that I wanted to clear up two things that have come up real recently. Scooter Libby being totally cleared, and if you look up Richard Armitage, you'll find the guy that did it, and it's not even a secret anymore. But for some reason, your left stream media still wants to propagate the fact that they want to say that Cheney and Libby were involved in this. Not true. Katrina, they want you to think that it was only black people that suffered in Katrina. Not true. Those are things that you're being deceived on. I just wanted to point them out really quick because this is the kind of thing that you guys need to know. And it's not that hard to research if you really get into it. It's just the way that I find out some of these things is when I hear something, when I see something on TV, my natural instinct is to think, who do I contact to find out if this is absolutely true? And who do I, okay, when I started hearing all the dust and I thought, oh my God, there's all these people. My first thought was, how black is New Orleans? And so I started looking around and then, just to check and see exactly how black New Orleans is. Because if all them people are dying, I'm assuming, well, hell, if they're all black that's dying, it must be 100% black. And I looked at a few things and come to find out it wasn't. In fact, Louisiana is the third blackest state that we have in the Union. It's after the District of Columbia, which isn't actually a state, and Mississippi. So it's actually the second blackest state. And that's 31.613 according to the census, U.S. Census, per 100 people. So roughly over a third. Now, New Orleans is more like 62%. Now, it's varied because after that, obviously, a lot of black people moved out. Some white people moved in. Things have changed, but it's still right around, last figure I got was 58%. So it's right around that. Now, here's another couple of things. Now, this has changed a little bit since the BP disaster. Do you know that Louisiana had one of the lowest unemployment rates in the United States, 6%, right before the BP thing? And the unemployment rate for blacks was 8% in New Orleans. Unemployment rate. So, the idea that New Orleans is suffering somehow from this disaster here 5 years out is another lie. Now, are they suffering right now? Yeah, because of the shrimp boats, because of the oil platforms that got shut down, because of this ban that Obama put on the offshore drilling. But that increased the unemployment rate. It's not anything to do with Katrina. We've already pumped out. Last figure that I got was over $150,000 per person that was displaced in Louisiana. Per person. And we gave next to nothing in Mississippi, which suffered quite a Biloxi, Mississippi, if I'm pronouncing that right. It was one of the cities that suffered the very worst. But all the emphasis was all put on New Orleans, and it was all done for political reasons. If you really want to see how biased your media is, and trust me, they're all biased, every single one of them. And CNN's not quite so bad, but when you're talking about MSNBC, when you're talking about the internet, anything like that, it's extremely biased. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about that bias, too, because I have the privilege of working at a major university here. And one of the things that's been going on lately, and I've got my own issues, and I've said before that I would talk a little bit about this. I'm going to take a couple minutes to talk about my experience with Google, YouTube, and the internet. I originally started a blog that was called thehippieconservative.com, and I did fairly well for a blog. I ended up with about 160,000 hits before they closed my blog out. That was originally on blog.com, I think it was, and I was doing really well. And all of a sudden, one day, I went to type in my own freaking blog site, and it was sold to a porn site. I mean, I typed in thehippieconservative.com and bam, it went to it. And, if you guys type in thehippieconservative.com, you can find my blog now by typing in the Hippie Conservative. I have lost thehippieconservative.com. And if you look at it, they took it away from me. And there wasn't nothing I could do. When I typed in hippieconservative.com, I tried to go to another site. It was still connected to that site, so I kept going to a porn site, and I didn't want to promote a porn site. So I went ahead and just dropped it. I said, you know what, I'll just let it expire. And then, lo and behold, they sold my .com to another porn site. But then I had the experience here at Flint Talk Radio. And I had an interview with Jared Townsend, which was the young man that was in the CNN YouTube debates. He was the guy that was holding the AR-14. If you guys go to my YouTube site for Bent Drive, which is another pseudonym that I use, if you go there, you can find and you can connect to any of these by just typing in the Hippie Conservative on Google, and you'll get all these going, unless they take me off of it. But when I had Jared on here, we were talking about how Joseph Biden, in a quick 30-second clip, had said the guy's a madman. If that's his baby, because he was calling his gun his baby, if that's his baby, he shouldn't have no gun, blah, blah, blah. And we did an extensive interview with Jared Townsend. He's a fantastic young man, no criminal history, no mental illness, not a single reason on earth why this guy shouldn't have a gun. Now, we tried to promote that a little bit, and Somebody from CNN actually asked Joe Biden, hey, you kind of came down kind of hard on this guy. Don't you think you owe an apology? Joseph Biden said, yeah, the next time I'm in Michigan, I'll apologize to him. 2 times later, he was in Michigan right prior to the election, still hadn't apologized to Jared. Jared was having a hard time getting any traction on any media. Nobody wanted to talk to him. I had him into my show. We talked about it a little bit. I went to put it up. It got taken off. I went to put it up again. It got taken off. This is all on YouTube. I went to put it up again. It got taken off. Finally, it got to put back on, but I'm not allowed to have any tags on it. And for you people that know about computers, if you don't have any tags, you're not going to get very many hits. Now, this is just the beginning of it, okay? Now, Johnny?
So Rod wrote something here. A prosecutor may charge, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a prosecutor may charge an individual with a crime even though the prosecutor knows for a fact that the individual is innocent. It's in regards to what you said something just previously. So
Oh, he's talking about Scooter Libby.
yeah, Rod Riker wanted to bring that up to you.
Yeah, he didn't get charged, though. I mean, he got charged, but he didn't get convicted. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Rod's 100% right. They can absolutely charge you, and part of the problem is it's character assassination, because what you're really doing is you bring. I mean, come on, John. If me and you got brought up on some child molestation charge or whatever, a certain percentage of the people would think I was guilty. And then say I was running for political office. It's a real handy tool to go up there and charge somebody with something, knowing damn well that they're not guilty, let it run its course, and then you're going to cost them political capital. In the end, the guy ends up losing, and then after the election, they find out it's free. A great example of what Ron's talking about, too, is that kind of character assassination is the opposite side, where they had the recent case, and I know Rod follows these kind of cases, so I'm sure he'll type in something on this, but they had the Hillary Clinton case, which was actually misrepresented as being a case against Citizens United, and it was mischaracterized as being about giving campaign donations. But in reality, what triggered the case was actually them running the movie called Hillary right prior to the election. And they managed to stop the damn movie from being put out, even though they sure as hell didn't stop Fahrenheit 9/11 right before George Bush in the 2004 election. But they did it, and then after the election, after Barack Obama wins, then the Supreme Court comes out and says, oh, okay, yeah, it's all right, go ahead and run the movie. But, for the most part, who the hell went and seen it, because nobody cares about it anymore. If it was prior to the election, it would have mattered. This is all part of what they do. And the character assassination, the manipulation of the judicial process, it's really the kind of thing that we should just absolutely be outraged. But anyway, to get back into the Google thing, it happens that part of my job is I'm moving some of the books to be digitized for the university that I work at. As they're digitizing, I call this the new dark ages. What I'm seeing, and if anybody has any other information on this, I'd love to hear anything else you guys got. But if you happen to work in a library or whatever, they're taking selected books and they're choosing certain books as being the ones that they'll digitize and certain ones that they won't. And one of the boxes, I was making a joke with one of the guys, actually, kind of a bet. And I told him that out of all these boxes of books, I had 8 of them, that he couldn't find one single book that said anything positive about America on the cover. And he went through, now, admittedly, they're rare in the university anyway. But he went through all the books, and he couldn't find one that said anything positive about America on the cover. Out of 8 boxes of books, which I can't even tell you, maybe 30 books in a box, and you couldn't find one. These were all to be digitized. We have to be very careful about that. I mean, you're going to have a process where you're digitizing books so people can get them online, but there's going to be a restricted amount of books that happen. And this gets me. That gets me back to the global warming thing, because let me just touch on something a little bit. I have to be very careful here because I work for a university. I love the university that I work for, but all universities now have become bastions of liberal thought. And what you got to understand about it, it's not a conspiracy. It's not something that's happening like they're having some grand meeting somewhere. What it is a culture. It's a culture of people. Picture. Here's the best way to explain it. You're a black guy and you believe in, and you like Newt Gingrich, or you like Sarah Palin. Here's a great example. You like Sarah Palin. You think, A, she's hot, B, that she's smart, C, you respect the fact that she came from nowhere without no political backing or anything else and went from being a PTA mom to being the mayor of Wasilla to being the governor of Alaska to being a VP candidate to being a major force in national politics. And you admire that. You, as a black male, or as a black man or black woman, really, can't go into a bar with your friends and hang out at the club and start talking about how much you admire Sarah Palin. You're going to be shot down. It's a culture that I'm sure everybody understands. In the University of Michigan, you can't stand in a hallway and tell people that you're against gay marriage. People will attack you. Crowds will form. I saw a young man who set up a table. We have these tables that you can set up. And he rented the table, and what they do? They do it for different reasons, breast cancer awareness or whatever. And this guy's had two messages on it, and one of the messages he had these little poster boards that he folded up so they would stand up. One of them said, "Sex kills." The other one said, "Jesus saves," and that was it. And he had a bunch of pamphlets that he got from the CDC and from some other ones that said basically, and this is the part that really pissed him off, is that homosexual sex was more dangerous and propagated more disease than heterosexual sex. And he was using examples from the CDC. Now, you can argue with this guy all day long if you want to. Okay, that's well and fine. We get all kinds. We have gay, transgender, bisexual, lesbian, transvestite, you name it. Every group has a right to say. We had a large picture that was put out into the middle of one of the halls that had an angelic being holding her hands up. It was a male face, breasts, and an erection in the middle of the hallway. Some of the Christian groups wanted to, protest. They said they wanted it taken down. That they said no. It's freedom of speech. It's art. We're going to leave it up there. Then one of the Muslim groups complained about it, and they took it down immediately, which is bizarre. But let me get back to this kid. This kid's working this table, and he's got these different things that are all around. And all the kids started coming around and yelling at the guy and telling him, you're a homophobic SOB, you're a religious nut, blah, 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 blah. Then the Students for Social Change, which is one of the more liberal groups, the gay and lesbian, bisexual, and everybody else started gathering around the table. And then yelling at the guy. Then they formed an arm link and wouldn't let anybody through. And then when one guy came in, you can't stop me from getting this. I'll look at it if I want. He went underneath their arms, and as I was standing there, and he picked up a couple of the brochures, and and the guys, the whole time the Christian guy is just sitting there, passive as he could be. Then that infuriated him. So a guy goes up and says, "Those are free, huh?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, I'm taking all of them." Then he took his poster board. Then they tipped over his table. Then one of the people threatened him, and the guy was gathering up his stuff, and he ended up going. And I went up to the kid, and I told him, "You want me to call safety?" And he goes, No. I just don't want any part of this," because he was so afraid that he would be harassed the whole time he's there. That's the culture that I'm talking about. This culture exists in your universities. It exists in your media in certain parts. If you're in Fox News, yeah, you can be a liberal, but I don't know that you're going to be sitting with Bill O'Reilly. I don't know if you're going to be sitting with some of the other more conservative people. You're not going to be with Lise Wheels or whoever. It's a culture that causes this to happen. And these cultures are what you got to accept. Don't think of it as being a conspiracy theory. And the culture in Google and on the internet is liberal. It's very liberal. And these guys, the best example I can tell you, you want to know how liberal YouTube is. Type in Bill O'Reilly, type in Keith Olbermann. In my world, Keith Olbermann and Bill O'Reilly are relatively the same people in a different clothes. That, they both, do the same stick. The one guy does it on the more conservative side. He portrays his part. The other guy does it on the more liberal side. I have no problem with either one of them. As a matter of fact, I admire both of them. They've gotten to the point where they're that high up in their career. That's kind of what I want to do. So, but if you type in both of them, you'll find every single one that's Bill O'Reilly owned by a kid. Bill O'Reilly shows what an asshole is. Bill O'Reilly does this. And then you go into Keith Olbermann, it's Keith Olbermann that, owns Bill O'Reilly. Keith Olbermann puts Rush Limbaugh in his place, blah, blah, blah. It's all positive. These are, you can make the argument that this is just the kids that are putting it on and that there's not. But there's a culture all the way around in that stuff that you have to understand that drives it. It's not so much that these people are necessarily, out of line. I mean, they all have the rights to do it, but you have to understand that. You have to understand that there's a clandestine culture that's underlining it. So that when you have Google digitizing your books, you should be a little bit worried about that. Because they do have a more liberal agenda. Are they going to take a book that says that Columbus discovered America and that he was friends with the Indians? Are you going to take that out and put the exploitist, imperialistic Columbus comes in, exploits the Native Americans and murders them? When you get that sort of thing, when you look at it, you have to understand that this is the books that your kids are going to be reading. We should be a little bit more careful about that. Make sure that doesn't happen in a way that might not be beneficial to all of us. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about. This is Rick Snyder. This is some local politics. I'll go through this really quick because I know a lot of you don't care that much about local politics. Rick Snyder's running for governor here in Michigan, and I just want to say that as it looks right now, Rick Snyder's going to walk away with it pretty easy. This is a good thing for Michigan. Already we're seeing more investment coming in. We just got done with Jennifer Granholm, who I call Buffy the Job Killer, and I think it's kind of funny because he's running against this guy, Verge Monero, and the latest poll has him down by 27. Verge Monero's down by 27. Rick Snyder's going to coast in pretty easy, it looks like. So already this Verge Monero is trying to come out, and this is inside politics. He's trying to come out and trying to get him to do any debates. And Rick Snyder's like, I don't, there's no reason to go into the debates at all. But now Rick Snyder has come out and said, or not Rick Snyder, but I mean Verge Monero. Democratic Lansing Mayor Verge Monero on Tuesday asked his Republican gubernatorial rival to join him in urging Congress to back President Obama's proposed tax breaks for business. And he's just trying to get him to do anything he can do at all to get any attention whatsoever so he can alienate any of these people whatsoever. And it's really kind of hysterical to me to watch because if you got a 27-point lead, you're not going to do anything. You're going to ignore everything that your opponent has to say. You're not going to debate him. You're not going to do anything. I do think that Rick Snyder should have debates. And actually, he did offer to have 3 debates. So, hopefully we'll see those 3 debates. Okay. I just wanted to touch on that really quick because I like Rick Snyder. I think he'd be good for the state. But I don't have anything against Verge Monero either. Okay. All right. I want to make a comparison here really quick. All right, and then I'm going to get kind of into this one. I'm going to make a comparison because I want to talk about some hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, there's 2 things that drive me crazy. One of them is people having a hypocritical philosophy where their logic is it goes in 2 completely different dichotomies. On one side, they'll say, okay, for instance, it's wrong to stereotype people, which is my other beef. And then turn around and stereotype people yourself and then validate it by making some caveat and saying, well, it's okay for black people to stereotype Republicans because they've been stereotyped. It's never right to stereotype. It's always, always wrong to stereotype. My good friend Lisa just pulled in, and so and she knows how I feel about this one. I really do not like stereotyping at all. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about some of the hypocrisy. I'm going to just point out some of the liberal hypocrisy. Now, obviously, there are some things that the right does that's hypocritical. But for right now, I'm just going to get on some liberal, because I think the liberal hypocrisy actually goes a little bit further. Prayer mats and Korans for Gitmo, but no prayer for the military or schools. So apparently, we're more concerned about that. Outrage over Abu Ghraib, but not over the UN abuses. Now, I touched on that. The UN had this thing in the Congo where they were actually taking young Congolese children and using them. There was 100 officials in the UN that were taking young Congolese kids using medicine and money and food that we gave them, Americans, and other countries, by the way, and then using them to get sexual favors from the kids that they were recording. And I mean children. And then taking those children and putting them on the internet. Now, Abu Ghraib was bad. You had a bunch of people, feigning homosexual acts, and kind of scaring them with dogs and having them pile up naked. But I don't think that's as bad as being a child and being raped and then put on the internet. But for some reason, the liberals excuse one, but not the other. Global warming will raise the oceans, but we should rebuild New Orleans anyway. Does that make any damn sense? I mean, you're telling the people that go ahead and drown. Don't kill a bunny rabbit, but killing a fetus is fine. I've never been able to understand that one. Negotiate with terrorists and dictators, but don't negotiate with Fox News or Republicans. Have background checks for guns, but not for nuclear weapons. Let any nut have a nuclear weapon, but I can't have a gun if I yelled at my wife. Defend women against abuse unless it's by a rapper or a hip hop artist. I can't say, hey, baby, you look nice, but some hip hop artist can say, shoot the bitch in the head and dump her in a ditch. I don't understand these things, guys. I mean, if you're a liberal and you can explain these things to me, then please call me and let me know. But here's one that I've come across lately, and this is the one. And I did a little research just to see if I'm on base with this. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a comparison between the stereotyping that I'm getting out of the left, because I just listened to an NPR story on Diane Reham's show. Diane Rehm was just about ready to die, I think. She's getting really close. And I know she's got spasmodic dysphonia, but I'm sorry, but Diane Rehm sounds really rough. Okay. Now, let's do a little comparison, okay? The percentage of the priests in this country, and there's roughly, what's the number that they give me here? There's been 60,000 men who have been active priests in the United States since 1984. 60,000, okay? We have a couple of different people, and I took the two. I actually got this off of a site that was bad-mouthing bad-mouthing the priests. So, I took a liberal source for the priests. I took a Muslim source for the number of Muslims that subscribe to radical Islam. This Richard Sipe is a psychotherapist and a former priest who has studied celibacy and sexuality in the priesthood for 4 decades. He's also authored 3 books on the topic. By extrapolating his 25 years of interviews of 1,500 priests and others, he estimates that 6% of the priests abuse. Of these, 4% abuse teens, age 13 to 17, 2% abuse prepubertal children. I think that's the right way to say it. Pubertal children. I guess that means that they're before puberty, but after being. No, that's before puberty. Okay, but anyway, here's an interesting point on these priests that I think is really interesting. There's a strange thing that goes on with the whole homosexual agenda on this. We seem to be missing a little point here. Of all these priests that are molesting these children, these their parishioners, the vast majority of the ones that I see are males that are molesting young boys. Now, it's interesting that the liberal community, the progressive community, comes out and makes a point of how hypocritical they are because they're priests and they basically badmouth homosexuality all the time as being immoral, and then they're engaging in it. On the other hand, what's not being said is why such a disproportionate amount of the priests that are molesting these children appear to be homosexual. And I'm not saying that that homosexuality leads to pedophilia or anything else. What I am asking is, why is that the problem? I mean, they're all celibate, supposedly, or at least they're supposed to be. So why isn't there? You consider that homosexuality, it depends on how you look at it. The general population, the numbers that I get from the gay community, is between 5 and 10% of the population. And then 10%, by the way, is disputed that that's high. 10% of the population. Shouldn't it only be 10% of the priests? Just throwing it out there, folks. Shouldn't it be? All right. Sylvia Demetris, a lawyer from Texas, has been tracking accusations against priests since the mid-1990s. By 1996, she has identified 1,100 priests who had been accused of molesting children. She predicts that when she updates the list, the total will exceed 1,500 names. This represents about 2.5% of the approximately 60,000 men who have been active priests in the United States since 1984. It is important to realize that these are accused priests only, but this woman says that it's 2.5. The other guy says that it's 6%. Okay, so let's say that it's roughly around 5%. Let's take a high number. Let's say that it's 6% of all of them. In my liberal press, when I'm watching the left stream media, what they're telling me is that this is a problem with the Catholic Church, with the Catholic Church, and I'll agree with that. The Catholic Church has been hiding some of this stuff. They have not come forward. They have been punishing these people. They have their own system by which they punish the people that has nothing to do with law. It's canon law. And in that process, they've been just telling them, no, 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 and moving them to different parishes where they're molesting other children. Now, that's systemic, and that is absolutely wrong for them to do. So I want to clear that up. I'm not backing the Catholic Church, but I'm going to make this comparison. Okay, so what have we established? We established that there's roughly 6%. We're going to take the high number. 6% of all the priests that have been engaged, accused, by the way, only accused, not even prosecuted and successfully, but accused of molesting the children. Now, also that the Catholic Church has systemically been hiding these people. That's the two things that we've established. In the liberal media, that proves that all priests in the Catholic Church are evil. And they work very hard at trying to say that these priests are stereotypical, which I can't stand that word or that methodology, stereotypical of what's going on in the church, because they're saying, well, some of them probably didn't even come forward or whatever, but they use it in humor. David Letterman makes jokes about it all the time. You got Bill Maher constantly making jokes about it, and they're making it sound like everyone does it. Now, they wouldn't do this to homosexual people. They wouldn't do this to black people. They wouldn't do this to Hispanic people. So why, is it right for me? I don't care if the stereotype. A lot of people make the argument. Well, stereotypes come for a reason, because people exhibit that behavior that causes people to see that stereotype. Even if that's true, if it's a negative stereotype, and you have 60% of the people in that given group, white males, that are exhibiting that kind of behavior, like I'm an imperialist, or I like taking advantage of people, or I like exploiting people, whatever your argument is, even if it's 60%, is it not unfair to the 40%? Is it not unfair? If in my earlier example, if some homosexuals are pedophiles and are engaging in aberrant behavior, is it fair for me to point it out the whole homosexual community? No, you liberals know that's not fair. So why is it that you point at these priests and say that that's emblematic of the entire priesthood? That's emblematic of the whole church. It's not. But you point out constantly this because of the systemic cover-up of the church. Now, my comparison from the book Who Speaks for Islam, written by I forgot to get the guy. I didn't put down the author's name, but it's a book Who Speaks for Islam. The author defines that 7% of Muslims who consider the 9/11 attacks completely justified and to be politically radicalized, and they use the term moderate for the remaining 93%. So 7% of Muslims engage in that kind of activity. But every time that the conservatives, and this is where you conservatives are wrong, every time you conservatives stand up and say that that's emblematic of all Muslims, that all Muslims are evil, that all Muslims are engaged in this kind of behavior, or they're at least passively doing it, and you use them in a stereotypical fashion, the liberals go nuts. Now, Pew Global Attitudes Project, which is found declining but still significant support for suicide bombings among Muslims in various countries, shows that 70% of Palestinian Arab territories approve of suicide bombings, 31% in Lebanon, and only 8% in Egypt. Once again, what you've got is a fraction of a group, Islam, Muslims, that subscribe to a radical fundamentalist form of their religion. And you conservatives are trying to paint all these people with the same wide brush. And you liberals who are outraged by this action do the exact same thing to the priests. Can you not see it? In Islam, in the mosques, there's a fraction in every mosque. And you guys are pointing out, the conservatives are pointing out that these guys are not standing up. This Iman Rauf, that's in New York, that's trying to build the mosque by Ground Zero. You defend him, but they don't come out, and they're not outing these people who are the same in my world. Terrorists, child molesters, that's close in my world. Okay, those are people that should be punished. Should be in my prisons. Those are people that are causing great harm to innocent people. So you have the two factors that are the same. A small percentage that the other side is stereotyping. Also, you have a church, a religion, that's at the very least hiding what's going on there. And yet, for some weird reason, Both of you conservatives and liberals, and this is, by the way, this is how I lose all my listeners, because what I do is I'm vilifying both sides, and so I'm going to lose everybody. So please don't leave. Please hang with me for a minute. But can you not see the hypocrisy in that? I mean, it's just ridiculous to stand there and say that we should have that. That's justifiable, but it's not. It's stereotyping. Stereotyping in my world is 100% wrong, 100% of the time. You can always justify. The Nazis justified murdering millions of Jews. Stalin justified killing his own people. Pol Pot justified marching people through the killing fields. You can always justify your action. You rape my sister, so I rape your sister. I'm justified, but we're both rapists. That's not how we want to be, people. That's not a good way. All right, I want to talk a little bit about global warming. Now, my stand, let me give you my brief stand on global warming. Okay. I don't know if this stuff, I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be a scientist. Politics is my field. But I understand the politics of what's going on. And the politics of what's going on with global warming is a politics of fear. That's right. Politics of fear. Unfortunately, human beings are driven by fear. It's a visceral response. We can't control it. It's instinctive. What happens is you get afraid. When you get afraid, you get defensive. When you get defensive, you react in a way that's not necessarily rational. We all do this. Politicians have learned a long time ago that they can drive you by fear, and it works real well. Oh, if you let this black man become president of the United States, black people are going to run this country. They're going to put white people back in slavery, blah, 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 blah. See, this is the kind of, that's how fear is driven. If you allow any of these Muslims to build a mosque in America, before long, we're all going to be Muslims. They're going to run the country. I saw that in the university where I work, where they had an affirmative action case, and this group, it was called BAM, by any means necessary. By the way, nobody should back any damn group that's called by any means necessary. I don't give a damn who they are. By any means necessary? I'm sorry. You know, I mean, if I'm a group that's I'm going to end racism by any means necessary. Well, how are you going to do it? Well, I'm going to kill all the black people. Does that sound right? Hell no, it don't. You don't advocate anybody that calls themselves by any means necessary. But this group, by any means necessary, was telling black people that if they did away with this particular form of affirmative action in my university, that it was going to lead to black people being back in slavery or being banned, a la Jim Crow laws, from even going to the university that I work at. Oddly enough, since it came to fruition, the judgment, we've actually raised the amount of minorities. We just reached our second year in a row where we have record minority enrollment. We did it by not targeting the color of their skin, but by targeting the poverty and targeting certain areas, which is well and fine. I don't have any problem with that. If you're a poor person, I just don't want Colin Powell's kids getting a free ride into college. While some white kid or some Hispanic kid or some Asian kid is living in the ghetto right next to, the black kid and not getting the advantages that he should get. So when you target these people, if you target an area that has more drugs, more crime, less college education, more poverty, whatever your precursor is, you look at it and you say, okay, I'm going to target that area. If it happens that black people in particular or Hispanic people are suffering more from that particular ailment, whatever is social ailment, whatever it happens to be, then they'll be the ones to profit from it. That's fine. That's well and fine. That's how in my universe, how we're increasing it. And that's the way it should go. But the point is that these people drive all this stuff with fear. They get you to be afraid. And there is no bigger fear in the world than believing that the world's going to come crashing down on you. That if you don't do something, the oceans are going to dry up, the crops are going to die, we're all going to be fighting over food, everything bad that's ever going to happen, and it's all caused by you and farts that come out of the back ends of cows. I mean, it's just incredible that we buy this. So, I've been looking into some of this stuff just to see, because if you believe in the global warming theory, and I'm not saying that it's not happening, okay, it could very well be happening. In fact, as I was listening to NPR this morning, and they were talking about it on NPR, and this one woman happened to call in, and she says, "Well, what about? I believe it's called the Bayer cycle, which is the Jupiter effect." And the way this works is that Jupiter has an enormous amount of mass. And in fact, Jupiter has the combined mass of all the other planets combined. This is how big Jupiter is. All the other planets combined and the asteroid belt equals the mass of Jupiter. So it's more than all the rest of the mass that's in our solar system. And when Jupiter gets to a certain area around, in a certain cycle, because it's like a huge cycle, it takes 482 years or something like that for it to go all the way around the sun, way more than the Earth. But when it gets in this cycle where it gets in the same side as Earth, it actually draws some of the heat out because its mass is so large, and it causes more solar flares, which is documented, and it actually raises the temperature of the Earth and other planets that happen to be in that particular cycle within that range. Now, it won't affect all the planets equally because all the planets don't have the same path. Some of them Saturn takes, considerably longer than the Earth takes not half as long as what Venus takes, blah, blah, blah. So it can affect the different planets in a different way depending on how much they have and where the position of Jupiter is. This woman immediately, instead of addressing it in a scientific fashion, she says, well, in the major universities that have published any of these studies that have looked at global warming, it has all come down. 90% of all the studies say that it is caused by man. Now, I get back to that point that I had earlier about a culture. It's not to say that it's wrong, but in my university, you can't say that you don't believe in global warming. Not if you want to continue to be a professor, not if you want to continue to work there. Because you can be a professor. There's actually, I call them closet conservatives that work there, and you can even be a moderate conservative, and it depends a lot on where you're at too. Nobody really gives a shit if you're teaching, I don't know, history or something like that. It is one of the easier ones to have. If you're in economics or business management, it's a lot easier to be conservative because those people tend to be more conservative. But you're not going to be a conservative that's in a sociology class. You're not going to be a conservative that's in a social work class. So I go up to those departments that's 100% liberal, 100%. And you won't have anybody else. They can't. They have a terrible time. You eat lunch alone. That's the point. You be eating your lunch alone. Okay. So when she didn't identify that, didn't look at it, she didn't argue about the science of it. And this was a scientist. She was from the National Atmospheric and Oceanographic Society, whatever the hell it is, NOAA. Anyway, she would not defend it based on the science. Instead, she runs back to saying, look at all these people that are here, all my liberal buddies, and every single one of them believes it. It's kind of like being the 10th guy that doesn't approve of Trident. Well, what the hell's wrong with that guy? 9 out of 10 people think that Trident's good for your teeth. What's wrong with that one guy? He's got to be wrong. He can't. That's why they use things like that. So if you got 90% of the people that are publishing this information and only one guy and only 10% that does, the assumption by people, and it's called groupthink, the assumption by people is that person's got to be wrong. But you have to understand, it may not just be the science. It may also be the culture that drives us. So it's not... So the point is, it may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I can't really tell you if it's absolutely true. I have some of my professors that I've talked to that say that it could be the tipping point. There's other factors. There's the sun. There's natural cycles. There's solar flares. There's volcanic eruptions that all influence the weather on it. But one of my very learned professors and a really, really, really smart guy, he told me, yeah, but it's, that 1 or 2% that we're pushing is constantly pushing it in the wrong direction. Now, I'll be the first one to say, I don't like polluting. People, if we can get away from this stuff, this is one of the reasons why I voted for Barack Obama. If we can get away from fossil fuels, we can get away from polluting, we should do it. We need to. We can't. My brother, who's a very conservative guy and a very smart guy too, we just don't share a lot of the same opinions, but he's very smart and he justifies his opinion in a very logical way. And we were talking about global warming. He said that it's the equivalent of a couple of cups of water in the ocean. And I says, yeah, but how long can I piss in your well before it becomes bad? Is it okay for me to piss in your well once if you got thousands of gallons down there? Yeah, it's not going to bother you, right? So you don't mind. Let me just, take a piss in here really quick. So, that's the point. If we're polluting, we need to stop We need to work toward it. Not destroy our entire economy. We need to move in that direction. That's the point. Not dramatic. I think we're maybe going a little bit too dramatic. And I don't think this carbon swap thing's a good idea at all. But, however, maybe we should work in that general direction. Okay, here's some facts for you. Now, you would assume if global warming is really coming out as bad as they're saying, that you would say, okay, what's the worst drought that we've had? Oh, it's had to have been within the past couple years. What's the worst series of tornadoes we've had? Oh, it's had to have been within the past couple years. What's the worst hurricanes? All the extreme weather, everything that we've had, it's had to have been within this past couple years. But what these people do is they data mine. And what data mining is that you go around and you say, this is the hottest year that they've ever had in Wichita, Kansas. Well, that's great, but what is that? That proves that Wichita, Kansas is hot, but it doesn't prove that the entire world's getting hotter. And they'll prove that different areas, they'll look at glaciers. One of my favorites is in the Pandora region of Chile, which is where a lot of the glaciers are that aren't in Antarctica. That Chile comes really close to the Arctic Circle, actually in the Antarctic Circle, and they have 48 glaciers that they've been monitoring. Now, 45 of them are receding. 3 of them are growing. Now, the article that I read, which was by National Geographic, said that without a doubt, the reason that 45 of these glaciers are receding is because of global warming. But 3 of them are growing. And they don't know why. They don't know why. But they know for damn sure that the 45 that are receding is because of global warming. But the 3 that are growing, they don't know why. Now, if you're that damn sure that it's global warming, why the hell don't you know why the other 3 are growing? That doesn't make any damn sense. If I put 10 ice cubes in this room, and 8 of them are melting, but 2 of them are actually getting more solid, it's not the temperature of the room. Wouldn't you think? There's got to be another factor there that you're not considering. That's just bizarre logic. Okay, anyway. Most tornadoes that ever occurred in one day was in 1992. 28 tornadoes occurred in Ohio on Sunday, July 12th, 1992. One of the record books is most recorded in a single day. They also contributed to the 1992 record of 44 tornadoes in 1 month and a record annual total of 61 total tornadoes in the United States. Now, that was in 1992. That's relatively recent. However, tornadoes have been decreasing since that point in time. Decreasing. They had a brief spell where they went up. Shouldn't they have gotten worse if this theory holds true? I'm just throwing it out there, folks. I just want you to think about this for a minute. The worst hurricane. Okay, let me grab a quick drink because I'm for some reason I'm running dry today. Then the hurricane that caused the greatest loss of life with the estimated death toll between 6,000 and 12,000 individuals, the worst tornado ever recorded in United States history, was the 1900 Galveston hurricane. In 1900. Now, you have to be careful. Listen to what these people are saying. Now, when they point at certain things like heat waves or whatever, and they say this is the costliest heat wave that the United States has ever had, think about this for a minute. I could have 10 100-degree days in Wichita, Kansas, and then I could pump $1 trillion into Wichita, Kansas, even though it doesn't need to be put into Wichita, Kansas, because there ain't nobody out there and hardly anything out there. And I could say that was the most expensive heat wave ever in the history of the United States. That doesn't mean it was the worst one. That just means it was the most expensive. When they look at Hurricane Katrina, routinely, and this is another lie that they're giving you, routinely they point out Hurricane Katrina as being the most expensive hurricane in all of U.S. history. Absolutely it was. But was it the worst? No, it was not. It was not the fiercest. It didn't cause the most damage. It didn't cause the most loss of life. The actual worst one was the 1900 Galveston, which killed between 6,000 and 12,000 individuals. The number most cited in the official reports is 8,000, giving the storm the 3rd highest number of casualties of any Atlantic hurricane, after the Great Hurricane of 1780 and 1998's Hurricane Mitch. The Galveston hurricane of 1900 is to date the deadliest natural disaster ever to strike the United States. By contrast, the second deadliest storm to strike the United States, the 1928 Okeechobee hurricane, caused more than 2,500 deaths, and the deadliest storm of recent times is Hurricane Katrina, claiming the lives of approximately 1,800 people. Now, if you're having progressively worse hurricanes, and remember, like after the Hurricane Katrina, out came Sir Al Gore, who said that all the hurricanes were going to get worse. Where's all the worst hurricanes? It didn't happen. They said that remember when they changed it from being global warming to being global climate change? Because they said they didn't want to have people focusing so much on just the temperature rising as the severity of the storms. But I'm already pointing out the severity of the storms is not in recent times. Droughts. The Dust Bowl, of course, is the worst drought of all time. That was in 1934, 1936, and 1939 and 40. It was in a certain period that helped dry it out. But we've also had other droughts. In the 1950s, the 1950s drought was characterized by both low rainfall amounts and excessively high temperatures. Texas rainfall dropped by 40% between 1949 and 1951, and by 1953, 75% of Texas recorded below normal rainfall amounts. This is in the 1950s. Excessive temperatures heated up cities like Dallas where temperatures exceeded 100 degrees Fahrenheit on 52 days in the summer of 1953. Kansas experienced severe drought conditions, during which much of the 5-year period and recorded a negative polymer drought severity index from 1952 until 1957, reaching a record low in the September of 1956. Then we had the 1987-1989 drought. 3-year drought of the 1980s covered 36% of the United States at its peak. Compared to the Dust Bowl drought, which covers 70% during its worst year, this does not seem significant. However, the 1980s drought was not only significant, not only the costliest. This goes back to what I was telling you before. This is the point. The costliest in U.S. history, but also the most expensive natural disaster of any kind to affect the United States. Combining the losses in energy, water, ecosystems, and agriculture, the total cost of the 3-year drought was estimated at $39 billion. Of course, that's easily surpassed now by Katrina, which is the most expensive U.S. disaster of all time. But once again, you can't focus too much on expense, because expense just matters how much you're putting forward. Now, obviously, people, we have a problem. And obviously, I think that there is a recent trend, and when I'm saying recent, I mean from basically 1990 to present, past 20 years, of the world getting a little bit warmer. Is it possible to see a cumulative effect? Yes. Should we all be focusing on it? Because we got, deforestation, which is a bad thing. We got a rise. We got a rise in the amount of people that are getting more prosperous. The industrialization of the world. So you got more cars. Everything like that should be considered. Are we moving in the right direction? This is one of the issues that I'm 100% behind Barack Obama's administration. Should we be moving a little bit away from fossil fuels? Should we be more concerned about it? Yes. Do we need to panic? No, we do not. The world is not going to crumble within the next 10 years. This is fear-mongering, people. Fear-mongering. We need to go in that direction. Let's not lose focus. Let's not pretend that we can just go on like everything's fine. We need to get it out of it. The United States imports a hell of a lot of fossil fuels. We're sending a hell of a lot of money. It contributes vastly to our trade deficit, $700 billion a year that we're sending over to OPEC countries. A lot of those are countries that hate our damn guts. We can't. I mean, we really need to get some of that money back home. So we're moving in the right direction. I back Obama's administrations, but we need to keep it slow. Let's not ruin the economy over it. Remember this. This is the most important point of the day. Ecology and economy are directly linked. Poor people in Yugoslavia, when they had the complete economic collapse after the fall of the Russian Empire, of the Soviet Union, when it fell, they ate all the dogs, all the cats, all the animals. They stripped the leaves off the trees and then burned the damn trees. So they stripped the landscape. There is no ecology if there is no economy. You absolutely have to have an economy that's strong enough to support. It's a luxury of people, okay, that have money in their pockets. That's how you recycle. You do all those things because you have the infrastructure to do it. So we need to go incrementally. Okay, I'm getting the sign already that tells me that another hour has passed. How is that possible? How is it possible? I have more stuff that I wanted to talk to you guys about. But we can't do it today. So we'll have to save it till next week. And until then, I want to say thanks to John Wilson and to Steve Myers for both being crazy enough to put me on there. I still don't know what the hell you guys are thinking. I want to thank all you guys for showing up and listening to me rant and rave for an hour. I don't know how the hell you guys do it, but you wasted another hour of your life. You guys, seriously, you need to get outside and enjoy some of the sunshine every once in a while, but do it after my show's over. This is the Hippie Conservative telling you guys thank you very much, and thanks to Brandon and Lisa to come and watch my show in person. I hope I didn't bore you guys to death. Maybe we all learned something today. So thanks once again, guys, and take care of one another. Peace out.